Sometime later, Captain Hongyu returned home after a long day on the battlefield. She walked into her bathroom, feeling the weight of fatigue in her muscles. As she turned on the faucet and stepped into the warm shower, the water cascaded over her, washing away the grime and stress of the day. She closed her eyes, letting the steam envelop her, and her thoughts drifted back to a conversation she had once had with her superior. Her superior, a woman with sharp, penetrating eyes and short, no-nonsense hair, had spoken to her with the kind of authority that left no room for doubt. "Hongyu," she had said, "as martial artists, we have an important task in this era. We must always follow the strong." Hongyu had listened intently, absorbing every word. She had crouched down, placing her hand on her fist in a gesture of respect and submission. "Yes, master," she had replied, her voice filled with determination. Now, as she turned off the faucet and stepped out of the shower, Hongyu couldn't help but reflect on those words. She wrapped a towel around her lower body and another around her hair. With a sigh, she began drying her hair, walking slowly towards her bedroom. The day's events replayed in her mind, particularly her interactions with Lu Sheng. Several minutes later, Hongyu arrived at her room. She glanced at the wardrobe, where several of her dresses hung neatly. While drying her hair with her hand, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Her thoughts turned to Lu Sheng, and she couldn't help but blush at the memory of his strength and composure. She thought about the possibility of having a deeper relationship with him, and a mix of excitement and anxiety filled her. She brought her finger close to her nose, smelling the faint scent of the battlefield still clinging to her. Images of the war zone, filled with mutant beasts and the relentless battles they had fought together, flashed through her mind. This week had been particularly grueling, and she felt as if the scent of the beasts had become a part of her. In the living room, Lu Sheng sat on the sofa, fresh from his own shower. He wore a towel around his waist, one arm resting on his knee and the other hand under his chin. He was lost in thought, contemplating the strange and unexpected turns his life had taken. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Hongyu stepped into the room, her presence immediately drawing his attention. "Sir," she called softly, "have you finished bathing?" Her voice pulled him back to the present. He turned his head towards her, his eyes meeting hers. With a pleasant smile, he replied, "Yes, I have finished bathing." He paused, then added, "Please, stop calling me sir. My name is Lu Sheng." Hongyu, dressed in a stunning red dress that accentuated her graceful yet powerful presence, began to approach Lu Sheng. The fabric clung to her form, highlighting her elegance and strength. Lu Sheng, who had been lost in thought, opened his eyes and was taken aback by her appearance. His shock was evident as he stared at her, unable to hide his surprise. Hongyu crossed her arms, her expression a mix of confidence and slight embarrassment. She noticed his reaction and blushed slightly, asking, "Is something wrong?" Lu Sheng quickly turned his head to the side, trying to mask his reaction. He closed his eyes, bringing his fist close to his mouth as he started coughing. "No, nothing is wrong," he said, his voice slightly strained. "Are we going to go now for the General Star certification?" Hongyu placed a hand on her waist and began walking towards him, her movements fluid and assured. "Yes," she replied, her voice firm yet kind. She approached him, placing her hand on his shoulder, and looked at him with a pleasant gaze. Her smile was warm as she asked, "Do you want to eat something before we go?" Feeling the warmth of her hand, Lu Sheng couldn't help but become somewhat nervous. He started sweating, his mind racing. He didn't open his eyes, trying to keep his composure. With a forced smile, he nodded. Yes, that would be fine. Deep down, he felt a conflict. He wasn't a saint, and the temptation was strong. However, moving too quickly felt inappropriate to him. He opened his eyes, his expression turning serious as he thought about the powerful generals. From his memories, those generals were quite older and carried an aura of wisdom and experience. Curiosity piqued, Lu Sheng asked, "How old are you, Hongyu?" Hongyu began tying up her hair, her movements deliberate. She seemed to ponder for a moment before responding. "I don't remember very well anymore," she said thoughtfully. "According to what I recall, I am over 50, almost 60 years old." Lu Sheng couldn't help but gaze at her elegant neck, the sight making him start sweating again. Her age didn't seem to align with her youthful appearance and vigor. After fixing her hair, Hongyu approached him again. She placed her hand on his shoulder, extended the other to the side, closed her eyes, and with a serene smile, asked, "What's the problem? I am probably only 10 or 20 years older than you." Lu Sheng put both hands on the sofa, feeling the soft fabric beneath his fingers as he tried to steady his racing thoughts. He closed his eyes and, with a forced smile, replied to Hongyu, more or less. He reached for a soda can, the cold metal against his skin a welcome distraction. He opened it with a crisp snap, bringing it close to his mouth. As he began to blush, he couldn't help but think about her age. She was the same age as his mother. The thought of Hongyu reminded him a bit of Dong Qingxue, a comparison that puzzled him deeply. Why was his subconscious drawing parallels between the two women? He opened his eyes, a surprised look crossing his face as he pondered the strange connection. The next day arrived. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the bustling city. Lu Shang and Hongyu made their way to the evaluation center, a place that was full of life and activity. The building was large and imposing, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the more traditional structures in the area. As they approached, the man with blue hair from Tiger Scorpion team caught the attention of the others with a confident smile, announcing, "The captain has arrived." His voice carried a tone of respect and admiration. The bald man with a tattoo on his head and the man with orange hair turned their heads back, grinning widely at the sight of their captain. Lu Shang, with one hand casually tucked in his pants pocket, and Hongyu, arms crossed and exuding authority, began to approach the group. The bald man and his companions started whispering among themselves, their smiles broadening. Seeing the captain's confident demeanor, they couldn't help but think she must have been successful in their latest mission. The evaluation center's building was a marvel of modern engineering, its glass facade reflecting the sunlight in a dazzling display. Lu Sheng put his hand near his forehead, shielding his eyes as he gazed up at the towering structure. "Is this the Combat Power Evaluation Center?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. "It feels quite different from the evaluation center back in Baihe City." Hongyu also took in the sight, her eyes scanning the impressive architecture. She remained silent. Just then, a captain with yellow hair and a noticeable scar on his face approached them. He raised his hand, a broad smile spreading across his face as he caught their attention. "I can't believe your team has returned so quickly," he said, his voice filled with genuine surprise. "You barely left yesterday. Finishing the mission that fast is impressive." His eyes lit up as he approached them with a broad smile. "Captain Hongyu," he called out, catching her attention. Hongyu turned her head slightly towards him, her lips curving into a smile. Lu Shang, standing beside her, looked at the captain with a confused expression, wondering who this person was. The captain, noticing Lu Shang's unfamiliar face, raised an eyebrow and asked Hongyu, "Is he a new recruit? A rookie your team is planning to bring in?" Hongyu shook her head, her smile widening. "No, he's not new, and he's not joining my team either. If he wanted to, I'd give him my position as captain," she said with a hint of amusement in her voice. Lu Shang remained calm, his gaze steady as he watched the exchange. He was silently lost in thought, trying to piece together the dynamics between the two. The captain chuckled, putting one hand in his pocket and bidding them farewell with the other. "Well, if he's that impressive, the Tiger Scorpion team will be even stronger. I won't interrupt anymore. Good luck with your evaluation," he said, smiling pleasantly before entering the building first. Hongyu waved goodbye to the captain and turned to Lu Shang. "He's the captain of another A-rank team, a good person and very strong," she explained. "The certification and evaluation for star levels are done here in the first floor lobby. All the power resides here, while floors 2 and 3 are for mission deliveries." The evaluation center was a bustling hive of activity. Martial artists of all levels filled the lobby, each one focused on their own goals and aspirations. Hongyu led Lu Sheng through the crowd, pointing out various areas of interest. "The procedures are carried out over there," she said, indicating a section of the lobby where several people were gathered. They made their way to a receptionist who was busily working. Lu Shang caught her attention and spoke with a firm yet polite tone. "I would like to certify my star level." The receptionist, momentarily distracted, looked up and saw Lu Shang with one hand in his pants pocket and Hongyu standing beside him. "Please present the corresponding documents and the letter of recommendation from the military department," she requested, her professionalism returning. Just as the receptionist began to ask for the required documents, Lu Shang interrupted her gently. "I don't have any of those documents," he said calmly. "Can I simply give you my name?" The receptionist blinked, taken aback. She gave him a puzzled look, clearly unaccustomed to such a request. "Who is this guy?" she wondered internally. With a pleasant smile, Lu Shang introduced himself. "I'm Lu Shang. The commander mentioned that my documents were already prepared. I was told I just need to mention my name." The receptionist, still somewhat confused, entered Lu Sheng's name into the database and hit the search button. A few seconds later, the screen lit up with his information. Her expression shifted dramatically as she read the details. Shocked, she realized the significance of the name before her. She quickly bowed her head in respect. "My apologies, Mr. Lu Sheng. We can skip all the usual procedures. Please, follow me so we can assess your strength directly," she said, her tone now filled with deference. Hongyu, observing the scene, placed a hand under her chin, closed her eyes, and chuckled softly. Lu Sheng smiled at the receptionist, appreciating her prompt response. The receptionist took out a tablet and led them down a long hallway. Hongyu followed, deciding she could also assess her own strength. As they walked, Hongyu asked the receptionist, "Can I join in the assessment as well?" The receptionist turned her head and smiled. "Of course, Captain Hongyu. We just need to complete your information too." As they walked, Hongyu glanced at the tablet and noticed Lu Sheng's details. Her eyes widened slightly as she saw his age, 19 years old. A sheen of sweat appeared on her forehead as she processed this information. She turned her gaze towards Lu Sheng, her eyes softening with admiration. A blush crept up her cheeks as she thought, "He's a genius. I never would have guessed he's so young." She recalled the time at her house when Lu Sheng had barely glanced at her. Now, understanding his exceptional nature, it no longer surprised her. After some time, Lu Sheng and Hongyu arrived at the grand testing room of the evaluation center. As they entered, a man with striking blue hair called Captain Lon was already at the pillar. His fists were clenched tightly, emitting a powerful golden energy that crackled with intensity. He sighed deeply before striking the pillar with a force that reverberated throughout the room. The pillar hummed and activated, energy rising within it and creating a dazzling display of fire diamonds. A nearby observer, his fists clenched in astonishment, stared at the pillar's readout. "Our captain has surpassed the second star by more than a quarter," he announced. "His combat strength exceeds 16 million. The admiration in his voice was evident. "It's no wonder he's our captain. If he punched any of us, our guts would probably be expelled." Captain Lon smiled proudly at the praise. He clenched his fist, feeling a rush of pride and power. Another man standing behind him, his eyes wide with amazement, thought to himself, "With the captain's speed of improvement, it won't be long before he tries to unlock the double bridge of heaven and earth and becomes a great master." A burly, bald man, also part of Captain Lon's team, watched with a mix of envy and admiration. He clenched his fists to his chest, wishing he could be half as strong as the captain. The captain turned to his team, shaking his head with a smile. "Unlocking the double bridge of heaven and earth is not easy," he said. "Any bridge that is unlocked would increase my combat strength by about 30 million, but it's a formidable challenge." Just then, the doors to the testing room opened, and the attention shifted to the newcomers. A figure wearing military boots entered the room, striding confidently towards the pillar. It was Lu Sheng, with Hongyu at his side. The blue-haired man, the captain, and the others turned to face them. Hongyu extended her hand towards the pillar, addressing Lu Sheng. "Due to the immense strength of a grandmaster, even though the instruments are made with the best materials, a single strike can destroy the internal components. That's why we use this synthetic crystal for testing." Lu Sheng, with one hand casually in his pants pocket, silently observed the surroundings. As he moved closer to the synthetic glass, he put his hand under his chin, contemplating the intricacies of qi and blood evaluation. "How is qi and blood evaluated?" Lu Sheng asked, turning to Hongyu for clarification. Hongyu extended a hand toward the glass, her expression calm and informative. "The value of qi and blood for a great master fluctuates. Because of this, the military removed it from evaluations long ago. Now, only combat strength is measured because it's the best indication of qi and blood power." Before Lu Sheng could respond, Captain Lon, who had been testing his combat strength earlier, approached them. With a smile, he directed his attention to Hongyu. "How did you come without warning?" he asked, his tone friendly and familiar. Lu Sheng turned to see Captain Lon, his curiosity piqued. Who was this man who seemed so familiar with Hongyu? Hongyu closed her eyes briefly, shaking her hands in denial. "Did you get stronger?" she asked, diverting the conversation. Captain Lon clasped his hands together, closed his eyes, and responded with a humble smile. "No matter how much of a great master I become, I'll never be your rival. I wouldn't even dare lift a finger against you." Hongyu forced a smile at Captain Lan's flattery. Lu Sheng, on the other hand, closed his eyes and felt a wave of disgust wash over him. The captain's comment felt overly flattering and insincere. Captain Lan now, with his hands in his pants pockets, turned his attention to Lu Sheng. He scrutinized the young martial artist with interest. Is he a new member? He asked Hong Yu. He's very young, but wanting to join Tiger Scorpion at this age shows his limitless potential. Hong Yu quickly shook her head, clarifying the situation. Lu Sheng is not my teammate. He's just a friend. Lu Sheng, uninterested in Captain Lan's scrutiny, looked to the side and remained silent. He didn't need anyone to make assumptions about his intentions or abilities. Captain Lan's gaze shifted to Lu Sheng with an intense scrutiny, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the young martial artist. The captain's thoughts raced, a mixture of curiosity and unease swirling in his mind. Asterisk this young man. He's Hong Yu's friend? And so young. Asterisk his analytical mind noted that Lu Sheng was not only taller but also more strikingly handsome than himself. The realization stung him, a pang of insecurity taking hold. As Captain Lan continued to inspect Lu Sheng from head to toe, he mentally evaluated the young man's appearance and demeanor. Despite his youth, Lu Sheng's confidence and composure suggested he possessed a strength that warranted respect. The captain couldn't help but think that if Lu Sheng had made it this far, he must have significant abilities. Lu Sheng, feeling the weight of the Captain Lan's gaze, closed his eyes briefly. A drop of sweat trickled down his cheek as he wondered why this man was so focused on him. The captain's disapproval was palpable, and Lu Sheng's patience began to wear thin. In an almost theatrical gesture, Captain Lan stomped his foot on the ground, his frustration evident. He stood before Hong Yu, his stance aggressive as he extended his arms to the sides. His eyes bore into Hong Yu with a mix of challenge and suspicion. It was clear he felt threatened by Lu Sheng's presence, questioning whether the young man's intentions with Hong Yu were genuine or merely an attempt to impress someone older. Hong Yu, observing the Captain Lan's reaction, clenched her fists to her chest. Her expression shifted from surprise to confusion, unable to fully grasp the source of his agitation. She wondered why the Captain Lan was reacting so intensely to someone she considered a friend. Captain Lan, unable to contain his jealousy, leaned in close to Lu Sheng's face, his eyes locked onto the young man's with a fierce intensity. Lu Sheng met his gaze evenly, unfazed by the Captain Lan's aggressive posture. He couldn't help but think to himself how these dramatic displays of jealousy and rivalry seemed all too familiar and somewhat tedious. As Captain Lan's expression grew more intense, Lu Sheng's thoughts wandered to Dong Qingxue. He found himself reflecting on her, wondering why her memory seemed to intrude on this moment of tension. The familiar blush crept onto his face as he thought of her, and he felt a pang of confusion. Why am I thinking about her now? He wondered.